I'm recording. Welcome, everybody. It is Straight Talk on Friday night, October the 22nd. And I'm here with my wonderful teaching partner, Trish, and our wonderful guest, Ilsa Fay, who is the creator of the EROS Tantra Festival. And before I introduce Ilsa, Trish, what do you have to say tonight?
On what specifically?
What's alive for you, my love?
What feels really alive for me, especially around Eros and Tantra, is okay, last week was my birthday. Y'all were here, if you were here. And I had a really embodied, juicy birthday with a bunch of experiences, a Gestalt dance workshop, as well as a fun, sexy party that ended in some fun, exciting, like rareness with this body. And I'm really with the change of the seasons and the inward look and the inward feeling. And so as like, that's what I'm bringing into this conversation with Ilsa today, is that, you know, this inward fall experience coming in, it's starting to get warm, soups and hot warm things are, you know, upon us, and you know, the inner expression of our own personal eros, our own personal embodiment.
Beautiful. I knew you'd have something wonderful to say. So I want to welcome those of you in our Zoom room: Eloise, Frode, James, Kathy, Krishna, Lorna, Mark, and other friends that are joining us. And of course, welcome to everybody watching on Facebook. And want to also acknowledge that most people who watch this show watch the replay. So even if you're watching the replay, you can still put comments in the Facebook page, and we'll try and go back and look at them. I am putting the spotlight on our very special guest, who's going to do much of the conversing tonight. This is Ilsa Fay, and she is a filmmaker, creative director, and the founder of the EROTICA Film Festival. We're going to hear a little bit about that tonight. And the EROS Tantra Embodiment Festival, which is coming right up. She's also the host of the Sex, Money, and Power podcast. But right there, we've got a lot to talk about. Sex, money, power, erotica. Needless to say, she works in the realms of sexuality and consciousness, creating spaces that support vibrancy and empowered humanity. She was born in one of my favorite places on the planet, Byron Bay, which is a beautiful, beautiful place. And ever since being in that location where she was born, she's been drawn towards exploring magic, sexuality, and consciousness, even since she was a child. Raised with a deep love of learning and a belief in the energetic and subtle realms, as well as our material world, Ilsa continues to blaze as a leader in authentic erotic integration. So how wonderful to have you with us. Welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Trish. It's super fun to be here. Thank you for sharing, you know, that introduction from me, and it's so fascinating to hear it spoken out loud back, and to hear it myself, and to notice the very strong themes that continue to be all through my work and through my life, and actually, you know, coming back into that place of like the deep passion of changing the integration and the relationship to sexuality, which is, you know, somewhat distorted and repressed and squashed and things like that in our society. So yeah, thanks for having me here, and I'm excited to share with you about what I do and the EROS Tantra Festival.
Well, we're going to hear all about that, but I'm going to go right into an interesting question. As I was reading your bio, based a little bit on, I've been kind of scoping you out on Facebook and listening to your chats and your talks. And you mentioned in your bio that even as a child, you were curious about sexuality. And one of the things that I have observed is that there's an innocence and a purity that children have, obviously, especially about sexuality. And then we are in this world that is so shame-based, where there's so much shame for touching yourself or any number of things. Most of the great religions of the world are built on shame.
Mhm.
How have you managed to maintain that sense of innocence, that purity, that kind of enthusiastic childlike wonder about sexuality?
Well, it's a great question, and I love that you reference culture and religion. They play massive parts in the development of people as they emerge into their sexuality. And sexuality is actually quite a new concept in amongst humanity. And this piece around the erotic innocence, I guess truthfully speaking, I haven't always had an experience of innocence with it. My relationship to sexuality has gone through the iterations of shame and uncertainty and fear and guilt and distortion. And so my journey through that has revealed to me, what erotic innocence is. And when you're looking at, children and their relationships to their body, it's not really about sexuality, really. That's, in my opinion, the gaze of the adults who have distortions projected onto the child, where the child is fundamentally just exploring. They're curious, and there's no overtures within themselves of anything that is, an adult theme and concept. It's just this self-exploration. Oh my gosh, look at my ears. Oh my gosh, look at these parts of my body between my legs, and oh, look at my toes. And it's not wrong or gross or bad or even sexual. It's pure innocence. So I think that piece, is often missing in the way we support children to emerge into their sexualities, and it requires the adult population to first and foremost clean up their relationship to sexuality so that they can parent in a way that doesn't project onto the child and create distortions for the child that don't necessarily already exist.
That's beautiful. And you're absolutely right. It's so important to support curiosity. And it's natural that a child's going to be curious about all the parts of the body, including their genitals. Now, you have a 12-year-old son. So, boy, how are you, as somebody who's teaching about sexuality and consciousness? He's right at that age. I hope you don't mind my asking, but how's it been going with talking to him about sexuality? And it can be so awkward for a 12-year-old son and his mother. How's that gone?
Well, it's not a topic that we are talking about right now, because you're right. We're now at a point where, and we spoke about this very briefly before we jumped on live, is that there's now an age space, and the relationship between a son and a mother needs to shift. So the way that I've parented up till this point has been to have an openness around the dialogue before the time where there starts to become risks to sexual health, to things like boundaries and consent, when they're starting to explore the outer world outside of the family home. So the way that some of the things that I've brought into my parenting is around hugs. Do you consent to having a hug from me? What kind of touch do you need? And, and the requests of, hey, mom, can you give me face rubs? As in, can you massage my face? And can you give me back tickles? And actually, can you, so there's this teaching around what kind of touch do I like, and am I willing to accept? And can I ask for it? And can I say no? And that is more important in the childhood years, which is then kind of supported around the conversations of, are people having boyfriends and girlfriends at school? Just want to let you know that it's okay if you like girls or boys, or if you like people who are them, and it's okay if you like more than one person at the same time. And, these sorts of permission spaces where it's not a direct, it's not so much a direct conversation. It's an acknowledgement that we're cool with this. And as long as the other person that you're kissing or holding hands with is an absolute yes to that, then do that. And if they're not really a yes, then maybe that's not the right thing to be doing at the time. So that's more the way that I've engaged in these sorts of conversations, is boundaries, consent, my own boundaries. Am I willing to be kind of tackled to the ground, or am I willing to, do I want to be tickled? Do they want to be tickled? And how do we negotiate our physical boundaries and what we need. So I think that that's, really the most supportive thing to give our children is, a sense of permission to say yes and no, a sense of acceptance to express themselves and be true, and a sense of openness so that if they need to ask questions, there's already the space that's been opened.
In my sex coaching practice, we talked a lot about children's sexuality and how to walk through that with them. And most of the time it's pleasure-based. Like they find something that's pleasurable and they want to do it. I don't know about you adults, but I find something that's pleasurable and I kind of want to do it. You else agree? Me? And so I heard a story. I'm going to tell you a story, actually. Story time, Trish. That I heard a story about when I first got into massage school. I know we're way back. We're like 10 years ago. That there was an experience where we were doing holotropic breath work, and a man had this experience in his holotropic breathwork session, and he had shared that he had this really powerful experience. He had this really amazing aha. He came out of it, just tears streaming down his face. And he said, oh my gosh, I realized why I have so much shame around sex. And in his vision, in his breath work, that he imagined a butterfly. Not imagined, he actually had a memory of something that happened to him when he was really, really young. And so there's this butterfly that was flying in the garden, and him and his grandma were outside, and the butterfly landed on him and he got an erection. And his grandmother shamed him and made him a problem for having this experience. Again, he's so young. So he was having this, again, pleasurable experience in his body, having this excitement and having just whatever, testosterone bodies do, and to have carried that for 40 years. And I wish that I remembered, his name so I could call him up and be like, how did that unfold for you? But what I'm loving hearing you say is this experience of just being open and expressive around it. That's how my parents were. Is like, hey, here's this Joy of Sex book. Here's an anatomy book. You've got questions, call me up. We're sitting at the at the kitchen table, and it's like, you're 16 and I have had 2 boyfriends, and they're like, well, no, you're having sex. Their question was to me, Trish, we know that you're having sex. Do you orgasm regularly?
Wow.
Oh my God. I was like, I didn't know what to say. That was not something that I was ready for. And they were like, here's this book. I grew up in Montana. Here's this book. It's called Adam and Eve. And you can go ahead and pick something if you want it. It was like a catalog for sex toys. I don't know if you know that. But they're like, it's really important that you take really good care of your body. And my parents were really expressive in that. And I think that that early childhood experience there really helped me start to move my focus towards Tantra and BDSM and the sexual expression and communicating and cultivating relational skills to get what you want and what I want and to negotiate in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. It's a great story. I love that. So I mean, it's, imagine, we're as adults, we, one of the things that really differentiates us is sexual maturity and starting to engage in interpersonal relationships where eros or sexuality or interest or infatuation or arousal is involved. That's not an appropriate element to be had between dynamics of children or children with adults. So it's really one of the fundamental things that differentiates us. And yet we see so many adults, my clients in workshops, in containers, almost everybody I have ever met has some memory of shame or of trauma or of repression. And it impacts, for the longest time until they're really willing to kind of excavate the depths of their being and choose, the value of pleasure, and to choose the value of valuing their bodies and their experiences and their hearts and things like that. So
it also takes a little bit of dissecting the socialization of sexuality and the communications around that. Like women are taught to be very sexy to attract and to get what you want, but also shamed for using that. We can get into that, but that's not what this is about. I have a question about what was the inspiration for the EROS Tantra Festival, and how did you want it to be different? Like, so that there's, Tantra festivals all over, and what was your oomph behind that?
So this is great. This is a great question, because I've actually been reflecting on it. And actually, I think the seed for this particular festival was planted when I came out of a 6-week intensive container temple training. And what came through was like where I needed to go was art, film, and education. And so EROTICA was originally born, and that was a one-night only performance art expression of eros, not the erotic, but eros, even though it was called EROTICA, because it welcomed in sexuality and eroticism, but it wasn't founded around that. And so EROTICA, as we went through the restrictions of COVID, it birthed a new iteration as a film festival of sensual, consensual, authentic intimacy and sensual film. And it was so beautiful to have all of these consciously made films that depicted things like shame and traveling through shame to deep self-love and connection, that showed intimacy, that showed vulnerability, that showed authentic relating, that showcased art and animated expressions of love and intimacy. And when EROTICA finished in June this year, our first online film festival, I knew that I had half of the piece. I had half of what I was here to do. And then a week later, it was like, of course, the educational piece is missing. And I tried to bring it into the EROTICA Film and Online Festival by having a few educational workshops to ground the erotic performance in a way, when we're using our eyes to interact with erotic or sensual content, it can take us out of the body. And so what I really want to do is to make sure that there's new expressions, a counterpoint to mainstream pornography, a counterpoint, but there's also the education that supports, the embodiment of true eroticism and true consent and true authenticity and true boundaries, so that we're looking at, entertainment and beauty and transmissions of eros. And we're also having the educational components that support us to, as individuals, move through the world from that place in truth, as opposed to kind of projecting it out or not being deeply connected. So that's really how that's come to be, is just merging the art and film, which I have a deep passion for art and culture, and bringing the educational component into it.
Thank you so much. I recognize that I usually welcome people and remind them to ask questions. So to the 15 people in our Zoom room and anybody watching on Facebook, I'll be checking questions coming into Facebook. So your thoughts, your comments, what does erotic mean to you? Krishna, one of our dear friends, writes, Eros, sexual energy running through our body. I'm learning it as powerful as intuition, and that it guides us into wholeness. So thank you. And Suzanne Marie in Ashland, Oregon. I was just on the phone with somebody in Ashland. And she says, erotic sensuality. And there's an important thing, when you're talking a little bit earlier about children, differentiating between sensuality and sexuality. And that delineation is so often not made in our culture. Nudity equals sexuality, which is crazy. Right? It's crazy. And so as you are doing education, as you're creating your film festival, as you're creating the EROS Festival, tell us, what are kind of your boundaries, your guidelines for erotic versus sexual, sensual versus sexual?
I'm not sure that I probably need you to ask that question in another way so that I'm really clear about what you're asking me.
Trish will channel me.
Well, I'm gonna add a little oomph of my oomphiness. I'm all over the board today. I actually, for me, eros doesn't necessarily mean sex or erotic energy specifically. It's, for me, it's the inner fire or the spark of life. It's kind of like chi, you know? So, like a passionate, sensual, embodied experience, regardless of the judgment of whether it's a good feeling or bad feeling, right? It's the vibrational experience of humanness. So does that kind of like
yeah I take it from I can take it from there. So I think, you know, that there is a almost a desire for eros to mean something to do with the erotic or to do with sexuality, and you know, eros, you can go and Google that and it will just come up as it's, you know, it's a mythological god who holds particular energies. And for me, eros is the spark of life. It's not about the erotic. It can include that. It's not about sexuality, but it can include that also. Eros is, where is the aliveness right now? Where do I feel the most alive? So Trish, you know, definitely what you were saying about the vibrational resonance of, does this light me up? Do I feel inspired, activated, awakened? Is my creativity sparked? Does this feel good and pleasurable, not from a place of moving towards addiction, because that's not eros, but from a place of, I'm being magnetized towards this next project, this next person, this next experience from a place of truth. And I think that when you're starting to move from a place of eros, it can be difficult to navigate, because you'll start to recognize all of the places in your life that are not truly aligned. All the places where your energy is depressed, repressed, where you feel contracted, you're in a job that you don't really like, you're in a relationship that's not lighting you up, you're having experiences that aren't beautiful. And so you keep kind of navigating and bringing yourself back to, where is eros right now? Where do I feel alive? Where can I laugh and feel happy and joyful, and that my world starts to reflect that experience for me? So this bringing through of EROS Tantra Festival, there's definitely the welcoming of sexuality, of course, because it's an integral part of being a human and of our society. But it's not all about that. There's also things in the festival that will be about art, that will be about the eros of the mind, of consciousness, and really merging and understanding through the cognitive functions. How do we be in our body? How do we experience eros? How does eros move in our womb? How does eros move in our heart? You know, it's more than just, you know, the erotic. Yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's important what you said. It was a little different than the question I was asking, but I'm loving what you're sharing. And what I am taking away from it is that really it is eros on a really big level. You know, and I liked what, you know, you both said about it being life force and chi and eros of the mind, eros of the heart, and not just the erotica of the body or the sensual / sexual part of it. So maybe this might be a good opportunity for us to take a look. She's got an incredible group of presenters, including Trish and myself. Can we go take a look at your festival here for a moment?
Yes. And I'm so excited. When I decided to do this festival, before we go check it out, and I was feeling into and trying to work out who was going to be part of this, and I've never run a massive festival like this before, as the applications, as I was reaching out to people directly, and I reached out directly to both of you, and the applications started to come in, and I'm reading the energies of these bios and the profiles and then the offers, and I was just like, I have to go to everything. I don't know if I can do that because it's 8 days and I can't stay awake for 8 days straight. But I was like, I have to go to everything that's on offer. It's absolutely incredible. So definitely let's go and check it out.
Well, it's so first of all, everybody, it's the overall website. So you want to write this down or just go there on a different browser. It's the EROS Tantra Festival.com. EROS, EROS, Tantra, TANTRA, festival.com. And so go there right now. And let's take a look at these presenters. I mean, it's an incredible list of human beings. And look at these bright, beautiful, all shapes and sizes and genders or binary. I mean, it's just a remarkable group of people you have. And I know about a third of these people. So I'm like, wow, there's a lot of people here I need to get to know. Hey, there's Trish Wright. And there I am. So Araminta, she's great. She's, of course, a longtime friend. So, yeah, I mean, this is really a remarkable group of people that you've got. And now, will it be recorded? So, for example, I'll just I'll choose one, Realms of Radiance here. So if I go to see Realms of Radiance, but oh my gosh, so at a time that I can't join it, will it be recorded? And if I buy a festival pass, am I able to then watch the recording?
Yes, absolutely. So the festival will run live, as in live workshops and lectures for the 8 days. And if you buy a pass, all of our passes are all access. And then once the live experiences are complete, you have another 30 days to access all the content. So you can watch something again, you can go and catch up on something that you missed. And what I've found is that, often it's the second or the third time you experience something that you get those extra pieces of gold and the glimmers of new information and new experiences in the body. So I would highly recommend that even if you do get to the live workshop, that to go back and revisit it and see how it sits and lands in the mind and in the body after that. The benefits of getting to the live experience, though, is that you will get to speak to the facilitator and the presenter. So if you have questions, you can meet, these teachers that perhaps you've been dying to meet for the last few years, or we're all scattered all across the world, and you can get into a room with them and talk to them and ask them your questions and be guided in a more personal way.
And that's something that Trish and I really enjoy, is talking with people after our presentations. Now, I'm going back to the past because there's something you've done here that I haven't seen this before, and it's beautiful. The highest end is buy your own and buy one for someone in financial hardship. And it's only $149 for the regular pass, plus being able to bring somebody. I love that idea. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. I've been inspired by, other leaders who work in sacred sexuality, by mentors that I've had and other teachers. And, it's a beautiful way to give back. And it's a new way that I hadn't really known about before I was exposed to the possibilities of working in this particular industry. So we've had many people actually buy the gift plus one. So if you are somebody who is having a tough time right now, who either emotionally or physically or financially, then please send us an email, because we have gifted tickets that are available to share with you. And we really want people to, be able to experience the beauty and to feel supported and to feel included in our community. So that's really important to us.
So that's really lovely. And I'm just going to go here one more time. So that's the buy your own plus one, which I really hope people will do, with regular pass, $129, or the discount all access pass. Now, what's the difference between regular and discount?
So all the passes provide exactly the same amount of access. We're just offering the possibility to people who are in different financial positions, that they're able to come, even if they're if they can't stretch to 129, then they can do 89. And also if you subscribe on our website, you'll get sent a code for 10% off. But if you go and follow any of our presenters, you can get 20% off because everyone's got a discount code. So there's lots of opportunities to have a reduced rate to come and access this festival. And it's been a beautiful inquiry for me to see and experience human honesty, because we've had lots of people just buy regular passes too, because they're in their integrity with where they're at. And I've absolutely loved that. Beautiful.
I am bringing into the Zoom room a friend of ours, Krishna, who has a question for you.
Sure.
So Krishna, if you turn on your camera, I have promoted you to panelist. And there he is. Hey, Krishna.
Hi, Krishna. You're on mute.
You're muted, Krishna. We can't hear you.
Yes.
Krishna, you're muted.
I'm still muted. Okay, is that better?
Now we hear you.
Hello, Ilsa. Lovely to see you.
Krishna.
Hello, Scott. Hello, Trish. So, Ilsa, I'm really looking forward to this event. I've got my tickets. I bought them 2 or 3 days ago. And thank you for putting the discount code on your Facebook page. And I'm looking forward to it. And there's some amazing speakers.
Amazing. I'm excited. I did see that come through and I was like, yay, I'm so pumped that you're going to be part of it.
Krishna, you know, your audio is not great. Can I read your question to her since you wrote it down? Yeah. So his question, Ilsa, is on power and sex. And he writes, culturally, sex is often referred to as a giveaway or a takeaway. For example, a woman is sometimes said to give her virginity away. Men are programmed at a young age that they need to score and they don't like to hear no. Women are programmed to give and often struggle to say no. What about the beliefs that sex is beautiful and natural? Terms like sensuousness, adorations, lovemaking, that taking, allowing, giving, and receiving are all part of consent. So the question is, if we say that culture is often shaped by how we raise our children, how can we instill in our children and over time our culture that sex is not about power or worthiness? That's a good question for both Trish and Ilsa, actually, but we'll go to Ilsa first.
Yeah, that's a powerful question, and deep gratitude for the way you've phrased it and the way you've opened up that dialogue, and feels really integral actually to how I move and to what I stand for in the world, you know, because my interest is in changing the culture, and it's both incredibly simple and extraordinarily complex, you know, from the biology and the makeup of male bodies with their hormones and their cultural conditionings, the way that females and our hormones and conditionings, and then we have, you know, the starting to shift in identities around, you know, pansexual and you know, them and their. So we're dealing with complex human biologies, psychologies and conditionings. And then we're also, you know, looking at, well, who's going to lead the culture? Who's actually responsible for culture? And the answer to that is, well, we are, each of us is responsible for the culture that the value set that we have, each of us, is how we start to move in the world. And that creates a micro culture. That's my culture, is a particular value set. And then when I take that out and start to engage with somebody else with my standards and my boundaries, we start to form a culture together. And then it kind of ripples out. So part of the intention around the Erotica Film Festival in particular, and now including the EROS Tantra Festival, is that we have now vibrational notes of conscious sexuality and erotic art and education that starts to change the conversations that we're having in culture. You know, so much of mainstream pornography is the primary point of education for people around sex. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it that way, that our adolescents and some of our adult population watch porn and then learn how to have sex from that. I mean, that's crazy. So if each of us don't want to be living an expression of sex and sexuality in public, which most of us don't want to do that, it can be a very private and intimate experience. We need to be creating avenues for the transmission for culture so that it can start to engage with what's true here. If we're only doing it behind closed doors because of shame, or if we're only doing it behind closed doors because that's the authentic intimacy between me and another person, then we're not providing the transmissions and the education for our emerging young people and the adults that already exist in the world to experience something that's different. So I think changing culture is complex. It's almost a slow experience, but then it's kind of fast in some places also. Yeah. I'd love to know what you've got to say, Trish.
Honestly, I just want to like pin that to the wall, because that was an excellent answer. And it really does start with the internal expression and how you choose to show up in that. I mean, without diving in to how society and culture is constructed and all of that is a whole other show. And if you want to talk to me about it, let's converse about it, because this is like a whole thing that I'm on right now, and how gender roles are constructed and sex is constructed and race and beauty standard and all of the things, and how it's created through religion, conversation, power. There's a lot of things involved. And yes, Ilsa, it's very true that it takes time to change the culture. And that really does start with self and in community. If you want to make things move, I'm going to use this term, faster, because I actually don't really think that it's going to move very fast, because it takes a long time for human brains to process and move things, is to put your energy and your time and your money into comprehensive sex education in schools around the world, and having conversations with your children about dissolving gender roles and human respect, and looking at people as humans rather than sex objects, even though they're going to be bombarded with all these really complicated and confusing images around the world. But to discuss those intersections with your children so that they know that it is a filter that society is running, and that there's more heart-centered, connective, sensual spaces, and to really support that, and supporting that through their exploration, teaching them how to explore in healthy ways. Things that I really appreciate about my parents is that they were like, hey, here's some condoms. This is what happens. I mean, it was really like rudimentary in some aspects, but what I should have gotten in school, but that's not what it was. And I sought out deeper connections, and I sought out more heart-centered connections. And I mean, I found the patriarchy, and I found manipulation, and I found all of that in Tantra communities. I found that in BDSM communities and polyamorous communities. I found it in all of the communities, because that's part of the structure of it. And it's really like talking about how our brains and our thing, like, I'm going to use the word brainwashed, how we're brainwashed to behave. And so that's part of parental and societal and my job to really show up and dissolve that inside of me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I just wanted to just go back, Krishna, because I know you talked about the word power, and I didn't address it because I went off on my train of thought around it. But power is a deeply fascinating inner psychology complex. And the only person who's going to be able to recognize whether you're in a power dynamic with somebody else, whether that's a colleague, a partner, a parent, or a child, is you. And the only way you're ever going to recognize that is if you're deeply willing to accept and own and entertain the possibility that you're responsible for the power dynamic that's playing out. And when, in my opinion, that when it requires courage, without doubt, it requires self-courage, and it requires the capacity to get inside your own mind and almost split your consciousness of what you're experiencing, what you believe to be true, and then the actual truth, which is that you're probably engaged in a power struggle with somebody else. And so you need to, if you're looking at kind of sex interactions amongst, kind of typical, stereotypical male-female dynamic of a male objectifying a woman, that man or that male figure would need to have the courage to really investigate why they want to do that. What do they get from that? And be willing to kind of keep excavating until they hit the core of their own innocence. And, that there's no victims and perpetrators, right? So whichever woman is also engaged in allowing herself to be objectified is also getting something from that. And that woman or that female or whoever is in that role needs to excavate the depths of her psyche to understand what she's getting from being objectified. What and where does that go, and what does she get from being in a lesser power than somebody else? And so it's very complex. And I think to change the culture, each of us is responsible for that. And also you have to courageously speak out about it and be willing to come up against the challenges of other people's shame and fear who want to squash it. That's been a massive challenge for me. But you have to keep going. You have to stand for what you stand for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Scott, you're muted.
And it's a constant process of coming to terms with our own sexuality and our own shame issues. Because almost everybody, I'm a coach, and almost everybody I know has some sort of shame issue, usually relating to early situations, either in childhood or their first dating experiences or their first sexual experiences. How often is a person's first sexual experience positive? Not that often. Every now and then, I'll meet somebody that had a really beautiful,
Trish is raising her hand.
Yeah, so
Yay.
Trish is the lucky one. She's the lucky one. But quite often it's not. Quite often it's traumatic, it's confusing, it's, it's forced, it's rushed, whatever it might be. Or it's, anyway, so I think our whole culture, I always say shame is the great human epidemic. And almost all of us have issues around shame that we're working on, often well into our maturity. So thank you. And that's all a wonderful way of coming back to the work you're doing, Ilsa Fay. Thank you. Thank you for bringing up these topics in beautiful ways and bringing in so many different teachers and presenters and speakers to help us to navigate, to learn about our past and how we see our past, and to open up new doors. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for seeing it and seeing me, and creating this conversation so that we can talk about it and more people can start to express and explore and be curious. And one of the things about this festival is that if you have no experience around these sorts of themes, this is a beautiful entry point. It's very safe. You get to stay in your home, in your own space. You don't have to have your camera on, and you can just be in your own experience, and you don't need to necessarily engage with other people. So if you're just emerging, if you're just starting to be curious, this is a beautiful way to start. And it also gives you access to be able to go deeper. So, you could come and do a workshop with Trish and Scott and just find that their teachings, the way that they communicate and their note is deeply what you need next. And so then you can go and follow that current. And so because there's so many teachers, there's so many opportunities to really find somebody that you're vibrating and resonating with, who is going to be able to support you in the way that you want.
Trish, do you have a question or a comment or a direction?
Oh, the look on your face, Scott. I love it. You were
Well,
like,
I heard the camera went to you because you uttered some sort of a noise, and the camera said, "Oh, well, Trish is up next." So
I don't exactly have a question, but I'm going to tell you where I was drifting to.
okay.
And, so what I've been thinking about lately around Tantra and sexuality and how we hold relationships and attachment theory, like I'm just giving you a little background of where my brain is at. What I was drifting to is how there's this idea that Tantra is really serious. And it's like, and it's breath work and it's eye gazing and you're like, oh, and it's like intense. And when I let that go, like on a personal practice I understand Tantra as being the unification of the parts, which is very gestalt for me. Like this is how I understand it to be. And the connection between my understanding of consciousness and higher self and my body and the, I'm going to use the term other, because we all know that the other isn't really, that's not true. And so I was just thinking about how much fun outside of a PIV or a penis and vagina or a, sexual, sensual experience in tantric practices that I've had. And how light it's been and how fun it's been and how deep it's been and how like sometimes it's been really dark and how it's had this really spectrum experience. And for someone who's watching or listening right now, that when Ilsa was saying like, hey, there's something for everyone and there's a teacher that's going to resonate with you, that's where my mind drifted. I was like, oh yeah, I wonder who's out there, because I saw the list of teachers and I was like, who's gonna like dig around in the deep dark, like earthy with me, and who's gonna remind me of the lightness of the breath and the giggle and the laughter, and who's going to cry with me. Like, this is where I drifted to, if you want to know how I got distracted, Scott. So I'm really excited to check out the website and the teachers. I'm really excited to be there and to teach breath work again, because that's one of my favorite really embodied practices. I'm excited to teach with you, Scott. And I'm really delighted to know Ilsa more.
Oh, thank you.
And really, extending the offer to both of us.
Beautiful. So Ilsa, tell us a little bit more about, like, are there particular speakers or teachers that might not be so well known or that you want to kind of spotlight?
There's so many. I think we have, it's just under 60 teachers.
Wow.
Which is amazing. And I've proactively gone and sought teachers, both extremely experienced ones. Bonnie Bliss is a very experienced teacher around pleasure, especially for women's bodies. Talia, you're just scrolling past her, she works through the voice, and has a deep connection between the vocal cords and the cervix. Yasmin is supports the Egyptian mysteries, so she'll be bringing Egyptian Tantra. We've got kind of performances, not so much performances, but opportunities to engage in music. So we'll have a few community nights where you can just listen and be in the expression of music, and you can move your body and connect with community. So there's a range, if you just keep going down. We've got Rupani, he's very experienced, is quite divisive in some of his thoughts and opinions and teachings, which is a really cool opportunity to question yourself and find your truth, is my experience. We've got Jane Hardwick Collins, who works with sex and eros after childbirth.
Oh, wow.
It's a really powerful topic. Yeah, nice. Really powerful topic. Chris Knight is bringing really strong mental and cognitive awareness to self and to embodiment. Very, very clear way of speaking and delivering. Who have we got? We've got so many people.
I
Nick
know,
Perry. Nick Perry will be bringing something around pleasure school. We've got Trish, you and Trish are bringing, I think, 3 or 4 offerings, which is really exciting, around breath work and codependent relationships, which I think is a really cool thing to explore. And then we'll have other, Shay Elise is bringing an offering around eros and sex after menopause or during menopause. Betty Martin, obviously, Wheel of Consent, powerful work.
We
Definitely
love Betty. We
recommend
had
it.
Betty on the show about two months ago. She's great. She's great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then we have some newer people, so teachers who are just emerging. And I think that it's important to have strong facilitators and teachers who are very experienced. That's definitely an important part of festivals and learnings. And it's also important to create opportunities for emerging teachers to be supported and have opportunities to begin to teach, because how do you learn to teach unless you start to teach? How do you vibrate and learn, about what the world needs unless you start to deliver and be open and available to feedback. So we will have a few new facilitators, and we also have a very large group of very experienced facilitators.
That's fabulous. We have a question from one of our audience. Nancy writes, I'd love to hear about having more respect, reverence, sacredness, holiness, and divinity for one another. And then intimacy will come spontaneously and naturally. That's more of a comment than a question, but I think it's a comment we all probably agree with. Anybody want to riff on that for a moment?
Actually, I've been journeying with the theme of intimacy lately. So this is great. It's intimacy is not as simple as you might think. In my opinion, it really, what it has called me into, I'll just speak from my own experience, is a willingness to surrender and go deep. And I know that seems like simple and not that difficult, but it is the most difficult to surrender. And if I'm just looking at my my relationships, my relationship with my partner, the willingness to continue to surrender the power plays, the contractions, the aversions, it's like continuing to surrender back into the heart, and allow what's actually there without an agenda. So this piece around that's currently where I'm at with intimacy. But I would love to hear more about your experiences.
Well, I just want to, go ahead, Trish.
My definition of intimacy has held for a while as vulnerability plus trust. And recently it has, I haven't found the right word for it. Semantic precision is one of my vices and things, but it's one of the, I think it's somewhere between investment and willingness to be with the, those pieces. So there's an aspect of vulnerability plus trust plus investment. That's I don't have another word for it. It's not the right word, and I know it. That's what intimacy is for me.
Yeah. And the only thing I was going to add is that it's just so important for us to recognize that emotional intimacy is the great aphrodisiac that leads to sensual intimacy, and quite often emotional intimacy is harder. It's easier for when we're teenagers. We fiddle around with physical intimacy before we fiddle around usually with emotional intimacy. And so really learning to, like Trish said, like you said, to be vulnerable, vulnerability, honesty, authenticity, that's intimate. That's intimate.
I also don't think that we're taught as children really, a lot of emotional skills, including coping and how to hold intimacy and how to hold someone's vulnerability or own. Like there's, the development of the identity, personality, and ego is very sensitive, and there's not really that many structures to hold those things while you're developing your body. Oh man. and to really be able to teach children, or our children at very early ages, to be able to hold someone's emotional capacity, or to take care of themselves in that, or to self-source. That's part of it. So I think that, that's why I think we go into that physical expression first, because it's not cultivated in our culture, and it's not cultivated in our families either.
Right along those lines, we have a wonderful comment from one of our regulars. Dia writes, my natural strong, here, I'll go to gallery view. My natural strong, irrepressible sexual curiosity was punished as, quote, naughty behavior, unquote. I'm grateful for my Native American great-great-grandmother for providing a pure natural element to my heritage of German, French, and English. I was formed in my womb experience during the last 9 months of World War II. My heart sings for tonight's show, and I most certainly will be getting the gift +1. Thank you, Dia. Namaste. Oh, and then Dia finishes by saying, Namaste, Ilsa, you are so lovely. And I agree, she is.
What's your grandma?
What, Trish?
Dia, what's your grandmother's name? Like, I have this thing, you probably don't know this, Scott, but I'm kind of neurotic about this particular thing. If someone brings up someone in their past, or they're a relative or an ancestor or someone, and I'm always like, well, what's their name? Like, I want to honor them, not just for being Dia's great-great-grandmother, but the actual presence and that person's experience on this planet. So if you can type in her name so we can just speak it out loud, that would be
We'll speak it out loud. Absolutely. That's a beautiful one.
Well, may I answer that question around intimacy?
Yes, please do, Krishna.
So just bear with me a second. There's something in the background. For me, intimacy it's seeing ourselves in the sacred mirror, the divine reflections that we see in another. But just as importantly, it's holding that sacred mirror for another. And they see certain reflections in us. And for me, relationship then becomes a spiritual journey. It's a spiritual path. It's a place to go. It's a place to meet the other with empathy. It's a place to meet my own triggers head on. And it's a beautiful journey, and it's got some real highs, and it's got some real challenges to work through too.
Beautiful. Thank you, Krishna. As your friend, I have observed the beautiful work you do. You have really been very committed to your personal growth work, and it's beautiful, especially considering Krishna is a very successful businessman who has made the time to cultivate these skills. So it's a beautiful thing about you, Krishna.
Thank you.
While we wait for Dia's grandmother, I'm going to take us in a slightly different direction for a moment. One of the things that we've been doing on my other show, Saturday Night Live, is raising money. And Deborah, my partner, has asked if we could do a little bit of fundraising on Straight Talk. And so we are raising money this week for Purpose Earth that provides grants to underprivileged people. And I'm going to play a little video with a woman that I've actually met. You're about to see a very short 45-second video. And the woman you're going to see at first worked as a slave, as a child slave in a sweatshop. And I've heard her story at length. If she didn't make enough clothes in the day, she did not eat. She worked 7 days a week. And she literally was rescued out of her out of that sweatshop in Nepal. And she's one of the grantees for Purpose Earth, who we're raising money for tonight. So anyway, here's a short little video.
And this is the time that we need to let go of all of our barriers and the things that told us to not do, and let go of everything and really participate in oneness, humanity, and really care for each other.
So we've made it very, very easy to support Purpose Earth. Everybody grab your cell phone. Everybody put your cell phone on camera. Okay. And now take your cell phone and head towards the dinosaur. Head right to the dinosaur. And do you see what comes up?
No,
Notice
but on your screen.
huh? Oh, it's up. That's embarrassing. Thank you, Trish. I need Trish.
Oh, okay.
Let's try that again. We've got our cameras. We are heading towards the little dinosaur, and look at what happens. It says open Give Lively in Safari, and you can click right there. Isn't that easy? Isn't that wonderful?
Scott, I just want to ask you, have you been to a restaurant recently? Because most of the things you do that now.
Yeah, I know, but not for raising money. Isn't this like the first time you've raised money for this way? So anyway, you can do by using your camera, even $1, or $5 or $500, or you can go to purposeearth.org. But seriously, every dollar they raise goes out to grants for people like that young woman you saw, who are creating important projects. So I want to ask everybody, please support purposeearth.org. And you can use your little camera and do it that way. And thank you very much.
There you go.
Yay. Oh, God bless you, Trish. I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I love donating. I just want to be a philanthropist when I grow up. I'm just going to make I do have a question for Ilsa as we sort of, come to our
winding down. Yes.
What I would love to do with you and with the people watching now and in the replay and with the people here right now is to really hear your vision for this festival, hear your hopes, and to really hear your deepest, like, wild desires so that we can put energy into that.
Beautiful. Thank you for opening that. My deepest desire and vision for EROS Festival, the EROS Tantra Festival, is for EROS to move at all times within the festival, from the technology to the presenters, to the experience of the participants, to the way that the offerings are woven through each day, to the support team, so that when you're in this festival, you're experiencing the full transmission of EROS, not just in each workshop and lecture, but the whole process supports you to move and to learn and to weave from this place of EROS and aliveness. So if you're coming to this festival, if you're not sure, the invitation is, when you come into the group, to follow your aliveness. When you go to build your schedule, to go and follow the aliveness by paying attention to what workshops and teachers like jump off the screen at you. So rather than feeling like you have to consume everything straight away, everything is going to be there for you. You know, it's like life. Everything is there for you. What is the thing that sparks? Where is your attention drawn to? Where is the aliveness that you want to go and explore and experience? And to give yourself this sense of full permission. You're going to be in your home. You're going to be in a sense of, in a private space. So you can explore your EROS in all of the ways, whether that's with your body, whether it's through your heart, your relationships, through art, whatever it might be, is to bring EROS, the vision of EROS, of aliveness, into your life, and to support you to then walk it out of the workshops.
Beautiful, beautiful.
We all hold that vision for her and for the teachers and for yourselves and for the people participating. Really project that out into the present, into the now, into the future, into all those people that touch those people who are juiced up by the EROS Festival. Yeah.
Because that's what we want, you know, right? Like, as a world of people who are deeply aligned and in a state of pleasure and aliveness. That's the ultimate. Yes. To live from that place. Yeah.
Well, may this be the first of many, many years of your festival. And Trish and I are looking forward to participating and teaching and meeting a lot of your other speakers, some of whom inevitably go, oh, we've got to have this person on Straight Talk. Krishna, it's so good to see you again. I love you very much. Hopefully you'll be coming out of quarantine, well, not quarantine, but your country will be opening up again soon. And I love the idea of you possibly coming to California in December. I hope that can happen.
I would love that, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't know. How did I not know? I'm super upset now. I'm kidding. Just teasing.
One last thing is I always like to let people know about tomorrow night's Saturday Night Alive. And tomorrow night, it's all about honoring our body temple. We've got Deepak Chopra. We've got Dr. Heather Sanderson. We've got James Schmachtenberger and Troy Stalwin. And we've got great music with Kayla Diana, Cornflower, Kristen Hoffman, Keishi Chai dancing, and our favorite magician, Sean Jay. So join us tomorrow night for Saturday Night Live. And next Saturday Night Live, my host will be Trish. Trish is doing double duty next week. We're doing the show together on Friday night and then Saturday night.
And triple duty.
Triple duty.
The self-love show.
And the self-love show. Go ahead, tell us about the self-love show.
Ooh, did you see our new flyer? Just so you know. Okay. So every Thursday morning, I run a show with one of my dearest best friends named Dawn Light Amora. And we have been hosting some of the most really beautiful, powerful guests who are committed to teaching tools of self-love. And that can be internal work or external communication work. Last week was about people who menstruate. We've had many people on teaching tools for emotional self-care or physical self-care or communal self-care as an act of self-love. And I invite you to come to either my page at Trish Wright Loves, or maybe I'll post something on the Straight Talk page on Facebook, and you can find us there.
And we get to see this brand new hot off the press. There it is. The Self-Love Show. Love Coach Academy and Global Peace Tribe presents the talented and incredible Trish Wright and Dawn Light every Thursday at 10 o'clock in the morning. So we'll see you hopefully tomorrow night for Saturday Night Live, the next Thursday for Self-Love, and then the following Friday night. And again, everybody go to the EROSTantraFestival.com. Again, that's EROSTantraFestival.com. And register, buy 2 tickets, buy a ticket for yourself, buy a ticket for someone else. I love that. That's such a great idea, Ilsa. And Ilsa, thank you for being on our show. You are a gem. I so appreciate your wisdom, your spirit, your fortitude. And I don't know how you have all the time in the day to pull this off, because running a festival is a huge endeavor. So our hats are off to you. That's a big, big project. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott and Trish, for having me on. It's so great to see Krishna. I'm stoked that we've met and that you're coming to be part of the festival. Yeah, and it's been super fun having this conversation and meeting some of the other people, and the questions. If there's more questions, please drop them in the comments on the Facebook under this. And yeah, I can't wait to also get to know you both better and see how our journeys emerge. So We'll see you at the festival.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you enjoyed the show, share it out, put it out on Facebook. We'll see you all soon. Good night, everybody.